Alright, it's the end of the month, and we've got a good number of packages, and there was one more than this, but I opened it up at a time because I needed to understand it, I guess. So you could say that that's me actually opening something to review it, talk about it, kind of in a bit more detail. I guess you could say I'm doing my job, which is always a job. But let's get these open. Yeah, I was a bit worried because I'm like, don't want to get the scissors out because I'm afraid this one probably has that vile stuff on the inside that goes everywhere. There we go. There's one more in there. Two more, three more. Okay. And then, yeah, guess we'll add this to the top of the pile since this is already opened. So yeah, this was the one that I fished out, and the main reason for that is Kite has been around a lot. It's seen a lot of edits. This one would be the discotheque release. They call this one the integral version, and reading the back, I was already kind of saying, okay, that's looking pretty good, and so I still fired it up to make sure it is what it claims to be, and it looks pretty legit and looked pretty good. You can see there's English dub and Japanese with English subtitles. One OVA and one disc, which is the 2-episode OVA. So it calls it episode 1, episode 2, and it shows you options on the menu. Oh, it was different underneath the slipcover, which was very nice. Different back too. So yeah, you can see reversible cover in case you like that pretty classic version of the image art. But overall, it seems like a pretty nice release for somebody who's especially into it. You know, 3 different versions. It looked like the uncut version was the full risque, I guess. And they gave different ratings. At the back here say the ratings. No sex but all the violence. All the violence, a little bit of sex. All the sex and nudity, completely uncut, adults only. Yeah, the menu was interesting because rated 16, 16, 18 plus, respectively. Overall, it seems like a pretty respectable release. I thought on the screen, it looked pretty nice too, like a good transfer as well. So, you know, I don't usually go into the details of them, but Kite being one where it's got all these weird edits, it felt worthwhile to do. So, any of y'all that are Kite fans, just FYI. Next we have Jobless Reincarnation Season 2. Is this a Part 1? Part 2. Season 2, Part 1. So hard to remember. Good Beans, Regions A and B, English and Japanese. That's about what well, okay. I'd expect that. I guess the question was, did it have more than that? And I think Season 2, Part 2 may have a limited edition version, but I don't remember what the Season 1 DVDs even looked like. Oh, Jesus. Well, let's take a peek. Wait a second. Huh. For some reason, maybe my eyesight's just getting bad. They looked kind of like claymation figures or something like that. I mean, I guess they look more normal, but I guess is it Zabuza? He's just got a distinct look. Anyways, continuing on, we've got a lot to go through. Lupin the Third, Italian game on Blu-ray. I don't think they released this one on DVD, so maybe the DVDs just haven't been selling as well, so they're only releasing on Blu-ray, which is unfortunate as a DVD collector, but oh well. Region A, Japanese with English subtitles. I think, they're trying to make sure everything gets released. And I guess I don't necessarily mean literally everything, but all the stuff that's just like, there's people who definitely 100% love the fact that these movies are available on Blu-ray. Like, finally, I can get my Lupin the Third home video collection going. Yeah, or continuing, I guess. I see Reborn, but I don't remember if that's the only part of the title. I'm just going to get the plastic off first and take a look. Maybe at the side here. Reborn Special Fan Edition. I don't know much about this. There's an English and Japanese dubs. Okay, TV episodes. OVA. 4 episodes on one disc, 100 minutes. Interesting. For some reason, that character keeps reminding me of the Hat Girl from Hat in Time, which I've never played, but I don't know. They keep reminding me of her, even though it's not quite the same design. That's a fedora instead of a top hat, I think. But still. Huh. Next up we have Ranking of Kings. There's no way this is the whole thing. This is Treasure Chest of Courage, which is all of Season 2? And the name came up because my friend had heard its name in passing regions A and B. French, Japanese, and English dubs. And I mentioned to him that it was something I've been curious about, but I've not started. Hopefully I will properly mark things as DVD Blu-ray, because this is... Well, is this both? Yes, that's a Blu-ray and DVD. And I did mention it for Jobless Reincarnation, but... Oh. Here's disc. Yeah, I'm not trying to look too closely at which is which. Ah, yes, Tona-Gura. Which is interesting, because you can see there's Kiss over here, and this one, I guess I don't know if it has a reputation, but I definitely got the impression that it strikes me as somewhat more risque or erotic or something like that, but for some reason, just the way he's holding on to the girl on this one kind of makes it feel even stronger in that regard. And I just remember when ordering these that was a kind of a silly observation. Oh, there we go. Region A. Japanese with English subtitles. That gets a little too hands-on. Let's see, he's grabbing somebody there. Just trying to think if these outfits look familiar, and something about them rings a bell, but I don't think I've actually seen them before. But an interesting looking show. Maybe not interesting enough to watch, but interesting. And then next up we have Kisses. Okay, if I remember correctly while looking at this, I did have something before, and this is specifically Kisses TV, I think. I did not know there was more than just the one series. Does that actually say the complete TV series? Well, cool. I'm only partially insane. Japanese with English subtitles, Region A. So, about what I think I described. I think it has a reputation, and it looks like it lives up to that. I think it's good to know that those options are out there. For people who like shows that are... It's not really fringe, but it's definitely outside the norm, I guess. Anyways, great Teacher Onizuka. The animation. Standard definition, 43 episodes. So this is everything on one data-dense disc. Come on. Did I look at the back of information? Look, there's English dub and Japanese dub. Region A. And it's not wanting to come out, but different out of the slipcover. I like the slipcover a bit more, but this is also a neat contrast. I guess it's the orange versus blue dynamic that the contrasting colors. You'll see them in a lot of things. But usually together on the same cover, so that's a little interestingly unusual. Next up, we have Mobile Suit Gundam, Cucuruz, Doan's Island. That's weird. Also, it's recognizing that face as a face. My camera is. That's kind of amusing. Let's see. Regions A and B. English and Japanese dubs. Alright. I don't know much about this content, but I see Mobile Suit Gundam and the thoughts exhaust me. Not that that's bad. There's, I guess, a style that definitely goes for that. I don't think all of them are necessarily going for this, and this is Dallos. It seems familiar. I'm wondering if... I almost got a feeling like something rare related to this. Well, this is a complete OVA series, which is Region A, Japanese with English subtitles, 4 episodes on one disc. Maybe I sort of feel like there was an HD DVD release of this. I could be thinking of something else. But I don't know much about it. It feels iconic somehow. Anyways, going through these quick, here's this week's Physical Anime Collection update. Alright, so let's see. I watched Reincarnated as Slime Season 3 Episode 70, dubbed with my Friday friend. Is that the right thing? Yeah, there's my thing. Okay, yeah. There was that. Yeah. I thought it was overall a nice episode. I'm not remembering how the next 2 episodes go. So it's nice. So, like, it's just entertaining to watch. I think if you're hoping for the parts of Slime that are extra confrontational, this season in general, it was mostly not. It had small moments in there, I'd say. Big things, sure, but, small moments, I'd still say. This one feels like this season feels like it's doing more world building than it is, or maybe even that village building thing I was talking about. And hopefully these hiccups don't keep interrupting my train of thoughts. But I watched the latest episode 72, the end of this season, and I think it wrapped that stuff up nicely. And Yeah, overall, the feeling of season 3, mostly being a world/village building at the same time, was pretty much there. So, overall, a pretty pleasant season, I would say. Next, with my Friday friend, we watched episode 8 of the Demon Slayer Hashira training arc. And I wasn't quite sure what it was going to end on. And it's really quite unfortunate that it ended not at a break point. But hopefully that means that the next part comes, and maybe the next part starts becoming the last part. I guess we'll have to see. But, overall, let's see. As usual, criminal underutilization of Nezuko, but beyond that, there was a lot more dialogue than I would have thought. But I thought it overall, it was a nice episode, but definitely need to see the next season. And my Friday friend is going, on a little trip for a couple more weeks, so we didn't want to do anything too time investy, so we went ahead and watched the My Hero Academia Season 6 EOVA. That would be extra OVA, probably. The strange one with the cards and the device that made holograms of stuff. I think there are things they could have done with that would have made it more interesting without doing anything, actually. Things that kind of reminded me of Mobile Suit Gundam Wing, especially the Wing Zero versus Epion? What was that one called? Pretty much the final 2 ultimate mechas, but not their final battle at the very end of the show. Did they have that? Maybe they did. Rather, another one they had. And if you know what I mean, then you could be like, oh yeah, something like that could have been really neat if that's the exploration they went with this. Because they could have made it an OVA, made it non-committal, but also just made it kind of terribly mysterious. Would have been kind of interesting, but, that's just my opinion. The truth of the matter is we have that, and the next season is a mini-season of memories, but as far as I can tell, it's just a complete recap of everything that happened at that point, so we're going to start the actual Season 7. I'm going by the numbering of... I don't know if I'm going by the numbering correctly. I haven't taken a close look at Crunchyroll, but, we'll go with the season that's close to finishing now, I guess. Well, but that'll be in a couple weeks, so no rush now, which is probably fine because the new anime season's starting up and we'll have to see what it'll shape up to be. Let's see, No Longer Allowed in Another World, episode 12. Okay, we had that interaction. It did some stuff really fast. Almost like it's like, oh, I guess we want to take care of all of these. Maybe, but at the same time, some of them don't feel like they would have necessarily been much better, more spaced out than they actually were. I think that was the last episode of this season or this course. I would kind of hope there's more, because it is a bit incomplete, but it does feel like it could actually be intending to finish up in a possible reasonable amount of time. I guess we'll have to say. But ultimately, we didn't get to see that person, and yeah, overall, it was an enjoyable season, actually. Failure Frame, episode 12. Guess it was okay stuff, interaction stuff. I think it ended with a core season finale sort of thing, so yeah, that might be done, wrapped up, and overall, it was okay. There's definitely something about it that's like throwing a solid punch, but it feels like the punch is landing a little lightly. It's still landing, I would say. I think people who are into the isekai junkie stuff will probably, enjoy that like I did. But, it's less than perfect, but nothing too bad. And there we go. Yeah, that was Thursday. Okay, yeah, we and now we start getting into stuff where the new anime stuff. So we had Loner Life in Another World, episode 1. I'm trying to remember what specifically happened in this one. I didn't retain it as well. I am mentally exhausted from having played a lot of Pokemon, like I mentioned last week. But what happened in this one? Oh, yes. Nothing much. I mean, it did some stuff, but, you know, our guy is just kind of out there doing stuff and, I guess, surviving. I wouldn't call it some of the more exciting versions of that. I think Farming Life in Another World starts out much better in that regard. But I guess we'll just have to see where it goes from there and what it does. You know, just off to a simple, intriguing start. Dungeon People episode 12. I do believe that wrapped things up. And I guess a pleasant episode just to wrap things up, especially with the previous one, was particularly interesting in terms of, oh yes, this is the kind of show that's that kind of show, even though it doesn't look like it should be that kind of show. But I don't know how to say that in more detail without spoiling. So, you know, overall, Dungeon People this season was very nice. I looked forward to watching it more. Elusive Samurai, episode 12. If there's anything I would have to complain about this, it's that we didn't get to see our main character doing as much stuff. But he was still doing quite a bit. But it was definitely a little bit more focused on a couple of other key important things. And overall, it was just a nice episode and maybe a nice finale to this season. I'm trying to think if it felt that way at the very, very, very end. I think so. Like, I guess if that was the only season they had, it would be unfortunate, but okay. But I'm certainly hoping for another season. I want to see a conclusion to the story. But I digress. I didn't catch up on any of my other Saturday things. I haven't closed those tabs, but some of them are probably falling a bit on the wayside. But I might be more into trying something this week. I'll talk about them in a little bit. Demon Lord Retry R, episode 1. I don't remember when the first season came out. I don't trust Crunchyroll's time because I think that's probably when it got added to Crunchyroll. Maybe it was on Funimation's site before then. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure I'm remembering that it has been around for a little bit. And I feel like this first episode reflects that. Because it's very confusing, and I'll have to see episode 2 to make for sure. But it almost looked like a remake of the series, because it's like, so this looks just like the first episode, except there's a couple small details changed there, and it's showing a lot more of our main character in the main world prior to being in that situation. But then it's just like, okay, and now it's just going through episode 1 again. How very strange. But then at the very end, it flashes forward to maybe where it was at the end of this first season, and very quickly mentions that stuff. Sorry, these hiccups don't want me to talk. Very strange stuff. Anyways, yeah, very strange stuff. But we'll have to see for certain, because it's not outside of the realm of possibility that if this was a standalone show, that flash forward would have been, oh, this is where the character is going to be at the end of the show. And then the rest of it is playing through it. But that also, it would all be weird. So I guess we'll have to see if this is an actual Season 2 sequel or if it's a remake. Actually, I wonder if my anime list already says, and I'm just being silly speculating on my own. But that kind of makes it interesting, right? Seeing my perspective in isolation, and then later seeing what how it compares. Being able to nod, it's like, hey, that was a pretty good guess, or shake your head, it's like, oh, Kika, you silly Billy. We'll have to see. The Story of Wanda and Sword, episode 12. Resolve Things. I think it was good. It repeated the stuff at the very end of the previous episode, because I just mostly noticed that because I mentioned my Friday friend having overheard a bunch of anime, and this was one he overheard and was like, yeah, that one had some pretty cool action. It's like very meaningful. There's consequences for failure, but also meaning behind what is happening, and it feels like the characters are connecting when it happens, good or bad ways. It's just very well done. And I think there's a little bit in this final episode, but it's supposed to be the wrap-up episode for the season, and so some of that makes sense. You had that moment, which was neat, but overall, you know, it was a neat season. I'm definitely appreciative of the fact that after the credits, I think it said, yeah, and season 2 is already in production, because, yeah, I want to see more of that. Next up, we have the beginning of the second season of Reincarnated Aristocrat Appraisal Skill, which Crunchyroll is numbering based on episode total. So when I say season 2, episode 13, I don't mean 13th episode in a second season. I mean the very first episode of the second season. I've read them before. I tend to read them as Crunchyroll lists them, just because then my notes can just be a copy of what I've watched, and those of you also watching it on Crunchyroll can say, oh yeah, I'm following what you're saying, Giga. Okay. And so we have the first episode of the second season, or episode 13, and fine return to form stuff. So I think if you like where the first season was going, this one feels like it's more of the same. Like it's not paying too much time playing catch up, I guess. And surprisingly, more things happened in this episode than I would have guessed, especially a first episode of a second season. But overall, neat stuff. Next we have Let This Grieving Soul Retire, episode 1. I was a bit worried about the description, just because it sort of gave the impression that our main character is playing the whole time in a cringy, pretending not to be as weak as he is, or something like that, while his friends are all phenomenal. But this one strikes me as having some potential of he's stronger than he thinks he is, but it isn't like an I parry everything show where it's just like, okay, nobody talks and that one's just kind of silly. Whereas this one, like, some of the little things he does makes me think that he's better than he thinks he is. But I'm curious to see more and see if that's actually the case, because that would be kind of cool if it does, and if it's not about him being like, oh, always super awesome, but just sort of like these little things that's just like interesting. I guess we'll have to see. It felt like it was a really weirdly executed first episode too, because like the OP happened at a certain time, but the OP also mixed in some scenes from the upcoming episode, even though it happened so late in the episode. I think the preview or the ending or something, maybe it was the ending, had stuff from the next episode. It felt like there was a weird flow to the story structure. We'll have to see what it's actually like once we go to the next episode. But an interesting start. And then last but not least, the most notorious talker runs the world's greatest clan, episode 1. So I was a bit worried by talker being in quotes there, meaning that, oh, he just has silver tongue. But it's an actual class in this world that they've created. And I guess we'll have to see what it is going to be like. It's really hard to tell, because there's a lot about the first episode that's not necessarily off-putting, but maybe not as on-putting as it feels like it maybe could have been. And I think it's little things, like it begins with, okay, this is happening and these characters are happening and our main character's experiencing this, so that we kind of have some understanding of their history and motivations. And I think those are good things to have, but it almost felt like maybe it happened a little too soon. Not necessarily too quick, but too soon. As in, like, okay, this world is giving us stuff, and I don't know if I know the rules of the world or our main character's life, so it's not as impactful as it probably could have been. And it ends with an interesting twist, but I'm not quite sure if that twist gives us a very good idea of what kind of show this is going to be long term, especially given the title. But I guess we'll have to see. And I'm sure there's other stuff about the continue starting up this next week, because this next week is probably when most of the stuff for this anime season starts. So, you know, I'll keep my eye out, keep watching stuff. Maybe try to catch up on some of that old stuff that I haven't finished because I'm curious about some of those. Some of them have actual story to them that I'm curious about. But we'll have to see. Now, for Pokemon Legends Arceus, and I do believe it's kind of officially called that in English, although Japanese is pronounced Arceus, so you could do that. There's some people saying it was censored because in British English it would sound like arse. And maybe, but I didn't see an actual quote for that, and people have pointed out other things that are just like, no, they're kind of acknowledging it should be that way, I guess. But I think you can pronounce it either because people know what you're talking about. Unless they have no idea, in which case they're probably not Pokemon fans, I guess. And whatever. Anyways, the point is, I caught Arceus last night. So that should tell you, okay, yes, I reached the point where I had all 242 Pokemon in my Pokédex. That includes Arceus and then Shaymin and Darkrai as well. And then in order to make sure I was prepared to transfer people out, I, for all the legendary and for the Hisuian variants that I was going to transfer out, because I guess they've just not been available in Violet, I'm like, whatever, I'll cop them. I knew I wanted Hisuian Lilligant for sure. I'll have to think about Hisuian Avalugg, because it's another Iron Defense Body Press candidate. But, you know, the point is there were others that I was interested in. Ursaluna was a top one because Blood Moon Ursaluna is just not as good for raids. Like, maybe people would say, oh, it's also not good in single battles, and yeah, okay. I could kind of see that. It has a strange identity, that's for sure. But I wanted my normal Ursaluna so I could have a good belly drummer that is better than Teddy Ursa. Not Teddy Ursa, Ursa Ring. It's easier to be better than Teddy Ursa. Other than looks department, Teddy Ursa is definitely cute. But I definitely like how Ursa Luna is bare. More bare than Teddy Ring. Or Ursa Ring. Ursa Ring, Ursa Luna. Okay. I'm just saying the name too much, I'm forgetting. But, you know, I've already got it transferred over. I got it trained up. I've also trained up Arceus and Manaphy. Although, for Arceus, I'm going to need to buy all the plates, which I do believe comes from that auction house. So I need to make sure I top up my money. And since I'm a working business person, that means I'm going to do the AFK farming, which I haven't done in a while. Which hopefully it works. I'll set it up tonight and then see what it looks like tomorrow morning and all that stuff. But yeah. You know, doing all that stuff, it's very nice. I'm back in the Pokemon Violet, training up raid Pokemon. The other one I have is Enamorous, but I think before I train them up, I probably want to make sure I get the Mirror of Truth, Revealing Lens, the whatever, to transform it into its form. I think I'm safe, but because I want to set it to its hidden ability, and only its normal form has the hidden ability, I just want to make sure I've transformed it so that if there's anything that registers it, it registers it. Heck, maybe I want to transfer it up to Pokemon Home again in its transformed state, just to make sure that that gets registered there, just in case I ever do decide to do something there. But I digress. Anyways, it was fun. There was some difficulty with the final battle against Arceus, but I think overall it was fair from a, okay, you're going to try this a couple times, this is an actual challenge given to you. From that regard, it was nice. And I also enjoyed the final battle because that one was also a... Was that one by a skin of the teeth thing? Don't know. They were nice and difficult though. That final battle. It was nice. I do appreciate the trickiness, especially since the trickiness isn't 100% the standard Pokemon game battle engine trickiness. It's a trickiness that comes from, okay, normally you play through Pokemon, you can switch when a trainer switches, and then those two Pokemon are kind of having their own new battle, and then you're just playing type advantage against them. But in this case, you should expect members of your team to faint because of just the way the battle mechanics work. And I don't like my Pokemon fainting, but when you're like, well, that's just the way the mechanics in this game work, then it's actually a bit more engaging. It's more strategic, more thoughtful. I mean, you still want to overlevel compared to whatever you're fighting, but I don't know if that helps as much as it did in the previous games. Like, it feels like a level 30 Pokemon shouldn't be able to whittle away at your health as much as it does, and yet it does. And yeah, fun stuff. Now, I'm probably pausing at that. I raised the research task for everything I might transfer out just to research level 10 so I could transfer them out without worrying about impacting the game itself, which does mean all of them have a little bit of EV. I didn't think they would, but I measured that, and yeah, okay, there's some extra EV points in there. I should probably double check their stats to make sure everything looks kosher, but I think I was careful enough. Got those berries in just the right place. Or maybe I didn't need to because, like, Manaphy only had 1 EV point in attack. It's like, okay, you have 2 extra ones, so that should be fine. So there could be little things like that. Actually, I can just calculate it in my head, can't I? Because I know Manaphy's base stats are all 100, but I don't know, it's already turned off. I'll figure that out later, but overall, I think it was appreciable, and if I choose to come back to it and choose to complete researching all the Pokemon, the motivation for doing that is that's how you unlock the shiny charm in that game. I've got some things I set up for myself in case I want to do that. In particular, I have the unevolved form of a couple Pokemon that would be really tricky to get otherwise, so I can get their research tasks by playing as them, and then either switching out to their middle or their upper forms, or just their upper forms, or evolving them. I think I have the flexibility to do whatever I feel like I might need or want to do. Maybe an example is when I caught Rowlet, there was also a Dartrix. Is that its name? The middle evolution, and I caught that, and I evolved the middle evolution into the final so that if I wanted to research task him, I could play as the little guy, middle evolve him, and I wouldn't have to go searching for him. I would just need to do research tasks. So, I left crumbs for me to do that. I didn't go hunting for all of the unknowns. That could be neat, just because I haven't gotten a full collection of unknowns in quite a while. I haven't tried to get all the poems. I've gotten all of the requests done except for the ones that involve the new fighting. Or at least I think it's all of them. I haven't taken a look at that because I don't know how much I care about that. I was mostly aiming for Arceus, and I got Arceus and I transferred them out. They're Stellar Terra type, but now I need to buy all the plates. Because the idea is, one of the advantages of Arceus as a raid Pokemon is it knows Acid Spray. And Acid Spray is just one of the best setup moves. And that combined with Judgment basically means that you could make it whatever of the 18 types you want it to be. And it should be pretty decent because it's got all around great stats. So you do that, and then all you have to do, if you want a Pokemon of a specific type that uses that strategy, you just switch out the plate on Arceus. And that's why I made it the Stellar Terra type. I don't know that it's necessarily the best in that regard, but in terms of terrestrializing and doing a bunch of damage, you're keeping your type offensive, your stab, all that stuff. So overall, it's and you're keeping whatever defensive profile you maybe were hoping for. So that's all very good. About the only problem is that it can't, the strategy doesn't work against steel types. maybe if there's any abilities that make you immune to poison as well, but I'm not aware of any, so there's just that. But that's nice. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling and talking about stuff, so I'll go ahead and wrap things up. Y'all, have a nice week.